Hey, it's Brian here with Brian Como Photography. Today we're going to be talking about black and white photography and specifically black and white film photography. And of course, bourbon. Been away for a while and haven't really been able to get at this much. I was traveling for some work recently. Just got to the airport. We'll be flying to Edmonton shortly. Here we go.
Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky like shooting stars? I can really use a wish right now, wish right now, wish right now. Can we pretend that airplanes in the night sky like shooting stars? I can really use a wish right now, wish right now, wish right now.
Yeah, I could use a dream or a genie or a wish to go back to a place much simpler than this. Cause after all the partying and smashing and crashing, and all the glitz and the glam and the fashion, and all the pandemonium and all the madness, there comes a time where you fade to the blackness. And when you're staring at that phone in your lap, and you hoping but them people never call you back. But that's just how the story unfolds. You get another hand soon after you fold.
All right, well, something super simple today. Wanted to talk to you a little bit about film photography. When I left on my trip, I thought I would have a little bit of free time to walk around or do something in some of the cities that I was visiting, but alas, that didn't really work out. I did, however, load a roll of film into my Canon A1, and it is a roll of Tri-X 400, Kodak Tri-X 400, and I've shot this only once before. I tend to like that kind of contrasty black and white photography, and you know, this promises to deliver a lot of that. And just to give you an idea of how I kind of set my camera up for shooting this, I do tend to overexpose my black and white film by one stop. So this is 400 film. However, I have the ISO, you know, kind of set to 200. And this camera is a little bit unique in that it's I kind of operate it like a point and shoot. I kind of set it in the aperture priority setting, and then you know, just play with the aperture depending on how much depth of field I'm looking for. And you know, what it does do is when you have kind of the meter on, it doesn't meter traditionally like I'm used to with a normal metering camera. It does, you know, kind of tell you what shutter speed it's going to use if you have to press the shutter button. So I use that to kind of gauge whether or not I'm going to like what I see, or if I'm using the right shutter speed. So that's kind of how I operate this camera, which is a little bit differently than some of my other film cameras. So I've shot one frame off this so far. It was of my brother's cat. And so therefore I was hoping to get more done and even finish the roll off, but that didn't, I wasn't able to do that. So I didn't have enough time. So what I'm going to do is I'll make another vlog when I get this film roll developed and show you what I get out of it. I do want to take some time and get a good amount of, or a good, you know, 36 good frames off this. So it might take me a while, but moving on from that, I do have, of course, a trusty glass of whiskey with me today. Instead of my normal scotch, I'm actually drinking bourbon today, and it is a Bullet bourbon. It's a straight Kentucky whiskey. Never had it before. I actually really like it. It has a bit more heat to it than I was thinking it would. It's 90 proof, so it's 45% alcohol. But it's still, because it's a bourbon, it is still kind of on the sweeter side. So I am really enjoying this. I do like to have bourbon with ice. Normally I would be drinking scotch neat, but I do like a little bit of chill and a little bit of water in my bourbon. So this is delicious. All right, so moving on, I do want to show you some of the black and whites that I've shot on different films over the last little while. And you know, I haven't shot a lot of rolls of black and white. You know, I generally am a fan of color films, especially kind of that Kodak Portra line I really like. and how it kind of nails those skin tones and things like that. But black and white is great for some things because it kind of takes obviously it takes the color out, and sometimes that can get you a focus on different parts of the image, and I really quite like that. Also, you can get some films that are really quite sensitive, or at least they're rated for some extra sensitivity. So I'm going to go through 5 photos here, just 5 that I kind of had lying around here on my trusty iPad or synced to my Lightroom mobile account. So I'm just going to go through some of these and give you an idea of what kind of film I shot. And I don't really remember the settings on these, but it doesn't matter. I could probably take a guess based on the depth of field of them. So here's the first one. It is a wedding photo. I generally don't shoot weddings. I've really only shot weddings for family members, and this was a cousin of mine, and they got married in the mountains of Kananaskis, Alberta. It was absolutely beautiful. I knew that there would be low light situations at the end of the day in the hall, and you know, the reason I chose to shoot film for this wedding was because I knew that I wouldn't have a lot of time to spend in post to get it done. So I just sent it off to a lab, and they kind of do it for you. So once I'm done shooting, I just send it all away, and it comes back perfectly, you know, essentially perfectly edited. I just have to do small tweaks if I'm looking for something like that. So I did get these developed at Indie Film Lab, which is in Alabama. Indie Film Lab, look them up. They do amazing work. I love working with them. I've tried a couple of different labs, one in Canada here as well. So far, Indie's my favorite. It just sucks that the Canadian dollar and the US dollar exchange sucks so bad for us Canadians when we're sending stuff to the US, but I digress. When you're looking for quality, they're a good place to go. So this was shot on Delta 3200. And generally what you see out of Delta is actually a pretty flat image. So there isn't a lot of contrast. There is a lot of grain. You get a lot of detail in the shadows, and you get a lot of detail in the highlights. So it's a pretty flat image when it comes back, which is fine. But again, as I was saying, I like that kind of contrasty feel. And so, you know, it was a dark room, and I kind of wanted to capture that feeling. So I did kind of knock down the exposure a little bit from the scan, which is fine, because when they provide you with the scans, there's a ton of data and information in them, so not worried about that there at all. But this was Delta 3200. I'm assuming because of the light levels I was shooting wide open, it's probably at f1.8. And just to give you an idea of that, for sure I was shooting on a little bit more of a modern film camera. This is my Nikon f100. I shot this wedding with my Nikon f100 for the most part. So that's what that was shot on. Next image here is from the same wedding. This is the bride's youngest little guy, and we did a little bit of a portrait session with both of her sons in the woods around the area where we were shooting. And you know, they had made their own little boutonniere, I guess is what they're called, out of feathers and other things. So they look beautiful, and yeah, this little guy was just great. This location was amazing, and I did get some both in color and in black and white of these two gents. And yeah, I just really like this image. I like his smile. You know, the depth of the image I really like. This was shot on Ilford 400. So again, FP4, I guess, would be the technical term for it, or that's the film stock I used, FP4. It's a 400 film. Again, I shoot about one stop overexposed. It does give a really nice contrasty look to it. I really like that look, but there's still lots of detail in both the highlights and the shadows. So I really like working with this film stock as well. This next image is an image of actually another photographer whose work I really enjoy, and we just kind of got together and collaborated a little bit as I wanted to fire off a bunch of different film stocks. And this was my first attempt at Tri-X, and again, really like this film. It's really good. The grain structure is really nice. It's evident there because it's 400 film, but I like that. And you know, the tones are really good. I got some really nice detail in the highlights, and you can really see on her face that there are some that there's some light coming in through the through the trees. Again, really like this. If I'd shot the other ones that I shot in color of this, there's lots going on as far as color goes, so it really took the attention away from her. And so that's one of the things I really like about black and white film, is you can kind of nail the attention exactly where you want it to be. So again, this image was actually shot with a camera that I received as a gift from another family member, and it's a Minolta Mazzam 7000. The lens on this is a 35 to 105, and it is a variable aperture. But it's nice. It takes a lot of getting used to shooting with this camera, and it took me some time to figure out how to flick through the different. I usually shoot in manual, and with this camera, that ends up being a little bit difficult. So I kind of switched into aperture priority mode, and every time I do that, I have to look at the manual because it's not exactly the easiest thing to do. Imagine if you shot with this thing all the time, it would get extremely simple. But I shot with it in aperture priority and set the aperture all the way down or wide open, and just kind of shot like that. So that's what I got this image with. Next image here. This is my boy. He does a lot of smiling, he does a lot of laughing, and he's just a great all-around kid. I was able to capture this, a pretty candid shot of him. I was able to capture this pretty seamlessly because I shot it with my f100, and the bonus of that f100 is that it has autofocus, and it's pretty quick. And it's not that the light in here was very good. This was in my basement, and it was just kind of pot lights, but they were still pretty bright. So there was lots of light, and I was able to catch focus pretty quick and get this shot, and yeah, I'm super happy with it. This pretty much captures exactly the character of my boy here. So next one is, as I said, I had shot two weddings of both of family members, and this was the other one. This is my niece that I was shooting here, and her mom is helping her put her wedding dress on, and I just kind of snuck up behind them and got this shot. Again, this was, again, with the Mazzam 7000, so it has autofocus, which does help in wedding situations. The manual focus of, say, the A1 or the AE1 or some of the other manual cameras might be really tricky in a wedding situation, and I'm not saying that it's impossible. I'm sure there are a ton of wedding photographers out there that use manual focus cameras, but I'm just not talented enough to do that. So I focused, as you can probably tell, I focused kind of on the lace and buttons there right on her back before the fabric meets up with the sheer part, and because that's where I really wanted the focus, was on that fabric, and it turned out really well. Again, lit with interior lights. And that is one of the benefits of shooting black and white film in some cases, is that you don't have to worry about white balance or color cast. So sometimes it can just make a more natural looking photo, especially when you're shooting indoors, because you don't have to worry about it looking too orange or too green or something like that, depending on the lighting. So yeah, so that's the photos that I have so far. So as I was saying, again, I have one roll loaded into my Canon A1, and I have actually quite a few lenses for that camera, so I'm excited to see what I can create out of that. Once I get that done, I will share and process. Once I get that roll of film processed and scanned, I'll share that with you, and yeah, that'll be an episode for another vlog.
Airplanes in the night sky like shooting stars. I can really use a wish right now, wish right now, wish right now. Can we pretend that airplane